Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're hopping into game two shortly here, and thank you so much for Jerry Blue for having that interview with me earlier this week. It was a ton of fun being able to get to talk to both of these teams and their players. Zongi spoke some big words in the previous interview, but Jerry Blue, we got to hear him from himself. He likes to be the carry for his team. He likes to have these pop-up performances, and we definitely saw in this first game that Jerry Blue got what it takes to make that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was playing extremely well that game. He was trying to put his team on his back as hard as he possibly could. And then in the end, it just all came down to being one shot by a Morgana Q. And it was not what you wanted.
You hate to see it if you're an 80 carry main, but we are going to be hopping into game two here with the draft coming up on the screen right before you guys right here, right now. Cassiopeia Varus being taken off the table by Favor, so just running it back on the bans. This time, though, Ninetale Fox Onyx, they do have access to their first rotation of bans, so they're going to be opting to take Diana and Tristana away from Fever.
Yes, and there is no Morgana ban quite yet, or Rumble. So, I mean, luckily we don't have to deal with the Tristana V1 yet again. That Tristana was huge. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason that that champion has almost a positive win rate in every single lane matchup this patch.
The dueling potential that you get from a Tristana in the solo lanes, or in if you have a CC follow-up in the bottom lane, it's just so insane in the early game. And then as the game scale on, getting that additional range and being a traditional crit marksman just makes her such a powerful pick in the bottom lane. Elise is going to be the final ban from Fever here as we are starting to count door 3, 2, 1. Rek'Sai, the final ban coming in from Ninetale Fox Onyx, which means that B1 Morgana you're hoping for insta lock here from Fever.
That is the insta-lock Morgana that you just hate to play against. It can go mid, it can go jungle, it can go support. It's just so good in all three, and it's just... Why? Just don't. Please.
We saw it pop off so hard in the last game too. That's how First Blood happened, was just a dark binding from the Fog of War. Orianna gets hit, Orianna goes down, and you could expect to see that very similar gameplay happening this game here as well. Jinx has been locked in from Ninetale Fox Onyx, and this is personally the pick that I've been super excited to see coming from Jerry Blue this whole time. I'm a Jinx stan. I love this champion. I think if there's any 80 carry that has hyper carry pop-off potential, it is this Jinx. Getting the get excited resets and being able to run around team fights at accelerated speeds. It's not quite the same as the rocket jump resets, but if anything, it adds more potential with the AoE of those rockets as well from this Jinx to be able to just really take over these team fights.
Yeah, so we are seeing a very similar draft that from Ninetale as we saw in first game, where it is that first pick 80 carry. It's not as going to be as strong as the Tristana, but I mean Jinx is up there as well. I'd definitely say she's top 3, if not number 1, as well as Tristana. And I mean Orianna, another very safe mid game pick for the mid laner there.
We did see it struggle a little bit in the early game, but it was able to do quite a bit of work in the mid to late game, as you're mentioning. Those late game shockwaves combined with the Leona Dawnlight Sunlight Strikes was doing so much work there for Ninetale Fox Onyx. On the other side, Nocturne and Xayah have been locked in from Fever, so instead of bringing the sun, it's going to be bringing the darkness this time around. Xayah also running it back, same champion as last time for the AD carry of Fever, as we round out Ninetale Fox Onyx with a Braum of all champions.
Yeah, I'm interested about the Braum. I mean, if they do decide to throw Morgana support, that is a very bad matchup for the Braum. So I could definitely see that happening there. But I mean, I'm looking to see a Rakan ban from Ninetailed Fox, as Fever did just run the Xayah Rakan. And I mean, they showed the Xayah, so I am half expecting to see another Rakan if they aren't throwing that Morgana support.
And Rakan would fit quite nicely into the Fever composition as well. They need some kind of hard engage option outside of Nocturne. Typically, he likes to be more of a follow-up. Somebody with hard CC, though, in order to be the front man, to dive into the enemy backline, would be that Rakan. We can also look towards an Alistar or Leona. So I'm expecting a ban on the support pick here from Ninetale Fox Onyx. It looks like they're going to be opting to ban out the Thresh of all champions here, alongside that Shen being banned out. Meanwhile, Fever, they've taken off the Aurelia so far.
Aurelia. I mean, Aurelia is just not fun to play against for anyone, right? It's just
Mhm.
She gets her 5-stack passive and then just one-shots you. It's just, where's the fun in that champ, other than if you're playing her? Very nice ban. I like the ban.
That is where the fun is. Just be the
No.
one playing here. Be the one that gets good at it. As Renekton's taken off the table, so a couple of top lane target bans coming out here from Fever. Not want to give anything over too strong to the top laners of Ninetale, Fox, Onyx. However, they will find their hands on the Volibear, another one of those safe top lane picks now that Nars kind of dropped out of favor. The bear does a lot of work, does a lot of damage in the top lane, and I'm personally hoping, if we're looking for something real cheesy, that we see the AP Volibear top lane.
I mean, there is also the fact that they are forward Volibear, right? So that it does hold that flex potential for the jungle, for the top lane. But I am probably expecting this to be a top lane Volibear just because Volibear jungle is not nearly as strong as it once was a few patches ago.
Poppy will be locked in for Fever here. Interesting top lane pick, not something we see a whole lot of, and personally, I'm not too much in favor of this. There's not a whole lot of dashes that can be blocked outside of the Braum dash to try and save an ally. So it is going to be up to Poppy to make sure that this Jinx gets isolated away from the Braum support by getting on top of her, using that steadfast presence, and blocking anyone from being able to protect Jerry Blue. However, that doesn't mean that Poppy is always going to have immediate access to Jerry Blue, because it is a short-range melee top laner versus the likes of Rocket's Jinx, and you have to make it through the Braum, you have to make it through the Volibear here. Now, what will help Poppy with these dive attempts is the Rel that was locked in from Fever, a hard dive composition it looks like coming in here from these final two picks.
Yeah, that is definitely a hard dive composition, which is usually something that you only play if you are significantly better than your opponent. As we saw last game, that is not the case. This is a very evenly matched matchup here. And I mean, this R5 Gwen, I am very excited for another Gwen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this Gwen's going to go, because you didn't mention that the Volibear can be flexed top, can be flexed jungle. Gwen also can be flexed into both positions here. We were kind of talking off of the analyst desk, off the caster desk, that Gwen has a couple of interesting builds, and I know that Gungeon was talking about the Sunfire Aegis build. I'm curious to see if we can get a top lane Gwen that likes to go that Frostfire Gauntlet. It's really weird to talk about, because you would think, you know, you got to go Riftmaker on Gwen, but Riftmaker is just so weak currently that if you go Frostfire Gauntlet, it provides the same amount of survivability when you're running that Conqueror, because you just have so many tank stats. But what's most important is that Gwen struggles to stick to people for extended periods of time in order to proc that Conqueror. So going the Frostfire Gauntlet would open up an avenue that allows Gwen to really do some damage and really stick to her opponent in whatever lane or jungle she ends up going to.
I am probably actually expecting it to be a Gwen jungle just because of how the players line up. It is probably going to be that Gwen in the jungle position as it was last game. But I mean, we saw this matchup literally last game, right? Gwen into Morgana jungle. And it's like Morgana has a much faster early clear than Gwen does. And it's just, she can get to the scuttle after a full clear before Gwen has even finished her Krugs. It's like, that's not fun for Gwen at all. And then Morgana is just going to get that early cheese gank as she did in game 1.
I'm really hoping that the early cheese gank doesn't work a second time. It feels really bad to die to just a Fog of War binding out of nowhere and getting 100 to 0'd for it. However, it is something that you have to be afraid of, because that is kind of the strength of Morgana and why it is such a priority pick these days. According to the champion select, though, it looks like it is going to be a Gwen in the top lane. We'll have to wait until the timer ticks down to see for sure that this pick doesn't get rotated elsewhere. But I am really hoping to see Popo try and bust out that Frostfire Gauntlet build. However, we can't ignore what Fever has got going on, because if there's one thing that Gwen, like I said, sucks doing is sticking to somebody, and Poppy, on the other hand, is going to steadfast presence this Gwen the first time she tries to go in aggressively, and then it's just going to absolutely beat down on this weak early game pick.
Yeah, Poppy, you picked a champion that has a dash into the champion that says, you can't dash into me. It's not gonna happen. It's like, I mean, that's why I was half expecting it to be the Gwen jungle, is just because that I'm expecting that early game to be really rough into a Poppy. It's just her entire champion kit is based around not dying, and specifically not dying to dashes.
Really, the big question for me here is how is this Gwen going to be able to impact the later game team fights? Because we're looking at the composition for Ninetale Fox Onyx. They have an Orianna, they have a Volibear, they have the Jinx, the Braum, the classic team fight front to back style composition. You're looking to have have the Volibear go in, Orianna Shockwave off of the Stormbringer, and then Braum is peeling for the Jinx. But Gwen doesn't really quite fit anywhere into this composition. I think this is really where we see Ninetale Fox Onyx with their roster swaps and trying to deal with having a sub playing in this game, in Lori in the mid lane, that they're trying to find the best pick for Popo. And with this Gwen pick, I think it is just a good pick for him. He had a pretty decent showing on it in the last game. It's not like he played poorly. It was just a couple of poor macro choices that really caused them to give up the lead that they accrue from themselves. So I want to see how the Gwen plays into not just the top lane matchup, but how is it going to be able to fit into the entire composition? More importantly, how is Fever going to be able to deal with it when they do start getting to that team fight stage?
I do definitely agree. I think he piloted the Gwen very well. It just came down to the champion diff of Morgana just having the significantly faster clear, just not even because of the players, it's just because her champion does so much damage to monsters still. It is not comparable to the amount of damage that Gwen can do, even if they are as good of players as they are. And as you were saying, this late game team fight from Ninetailed Fox isn't something to be laughed at. I mean, you do have that Jinx Orianna damage, and assuming that Orianna doesn't get nearly as behind as she did last game, she is able to output that really strong in mid game to even late game damage, as well as a little bit of utility on her E as well.
It's going to be pretty crazy to see how these two teams match up. For me personally, I actually think that Ninetale Fox Onyx is going to have a better team fight once we get to the mid to late game here. And I'm going to vote for them to take this game away. However, Cam, I need to ask you, who do you think is going to win game 2 here?
Oh, you already know. It's Ninetale. Of course.
Call me a traitor, but you're sticking to your guns here. What can I say? I'm a true Jinx fan. I think the champion's insanely strong and doesn't get enough credit. But ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Now it's time for you to vote in the Twitch chat. Go ahead and use your channel points to let us know who you think is going to walk away with game 2 victory here. And we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes with Mac, Dewey, and Gungeon bringing you the game live on the Rift. So do not touch that browser. We will see you guys shortly.
Hello, Summoners. Welcome back onto the Rift for game number 2 of this Block 3 show match between Fever and Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx. The 4th place squad, Fever, finding a tough win in game number 1 as Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx Gunjin, they almost pulled it off in the late game. Blue's Tristana, an absolute monster, but it wasn't enough to slow down the likes of Zongi and JTS. And as soon as Evil Zara, once again getting the Zaya pick, he found 3-4 items, found a way to stay alive in those team fights, and they managed to pull out this victory. This time around, compositions looking pretty similar compared to game number 1 from both of these teams.
Comps look similar, but I feel like the ideas of both of these teams and what they want to do, but it looks like there's going to be a little bit of damage, but not too much. Don't get baited by a Gunjin. It's just bot lane trading. In terms of composition, I think they look similar, but I do think that something interesting that Fever has done is that they've kind of made this comp a little bit more suited to how they played in game number 1. In game number 1, they had the side lane threat of the Diana, but it felt like in a lot of times in the mid game, they were just forcing it down mid, saying, oh, we're just going to keep taking the team fight, and they were getting punished. J Blue giveth and J Blue taketh in that game. That's kind of how that's the title for game number 1. But in game number 2, I feel like they kind of built the comp even more in that favor, because Nocturne, that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to just run it down mid, run onto Orianna and onto this Jinx, and they can force these team fights even harder. So I'm excited that Fever has kind of adapted to a more centered, not a better team comp, but just something that's centered more around the playstyle they want to adopt right now. For the side of Nine-Tailed Fox, I'm excited to see this Gwen top lane. I do think he can get abused a little bit in the early game, and Stubby with this Poppy into the Gwen matchup. Gwen likes to dash around a lot, and especially in the early game, she can get punished. And so if there is some threat from Zongi and JTP, I think it gets really scary, and I think that might be a solo kill almost.
And once again, we see Zongi on this Morgana opt for a one-side only clear into the mid lane gank, and this time Lowry, she doesn't get caught by it. And looking at the bot lane now, Gunjin, Tipic is headed down into a gank. Rice every meal gonna interrupt things. Evil Zara using his flash to get away, and the gank is foiled, but that's an important summoner spell getting burned.
They get the important summoner, and I think this is a kind of a change that the side of No Fear Wolves on the brain, Nine-Tailed Fox have been doing. It has been the swapping to the double red trinkets in the early game, so they were able to clear out enough vision. Play the top side. It's so close.
Stubby not finding the auto attack to finish off Popo. Gunjin, after seeing the draft come through, you were excited about this top lane matchup, and it's delivering on the close action.
Yeah, Popo is able to TP and tries to get the solo kill on. Stubby is able to flash away, and now when Stubby does get that reset, he should be in a little bit of a better lane position, but the matchup is close. As long as Popo can make sure that his E doesn't get grounded by the Poppy W, he should be fine in these trades, and as he stacks up that Conqueror, he should be really in a really good position to really beat up on this Poppy. My big fear is that with how Fever's been playing, and especially how they played so aggressive in the early game, in game number 1, with the Nocturne pick, they're gonna send him to roam, and if a Gwen gets in their tower with the Nocturne, with a Morgana there is going to be a party in the top lane, and Gwen is not going to be surviving it.
Right, last week, Fever found themselves, after winning the first game against Death Cards Academy, losing 2 in a row, falling to that Block 3 series, overall record of 1-2. This time around, Gunjin, they have a lot of comfort picks to try to help them stay consistent in this series. Stubby on this Poppy, very experienced. Evil Zara and Zongi both on the same champions from last game, not receiving any bans in that category. And Rice every meal on this rail has been known to pop off. We see JTS talking about the roams, Gunjin, exactly what you were expecting. He's got the move speed, he's found the fear, nowhere left to run. Popo gets taken down for first blood.
And Stubby comes in for the dash secure right there. And that's exactly what I mentioned. Even though this mid lane matchup is a little bit, it's pretty even. Again, it is a counter matchup in terms of the side of JTS. There's going to be some play in the bot lane. Could get a stun here.
Both ADCs stunned up. There is Rice over Meal. Got to be careful. Tipic spotted out on the ward. He is wanting to look for this gank. The stun's coming through. Rice over Meal barely able to get out of that gank. Wow, what an escape! But both flashes now down for the Fever bot lane.
Yeah, both flashes being expended right there, and a great play by Merlix to just get his Braum passive on every single member down there, and Jared Blue is just able to stack. Tipic tries to go for the flash, but there's just not enough damage, and Rice is able to make it out, and it looks like there's going to be a little bit of a response. As you can see that both the junglers are pathing into the spot set as they want to secure that early Ocean Dragon, just try to get a little bit more sustain and a little bit more get that stacking potential ready, because we can see kind of the power of these early game stacking dragons, as in the last game it felt like if Fever hadn't kind of conceded dragon number 3, they could have tried to end that game a little bit earlier and made it to a situation where Jerry Blue never got to scale and free fire in those team fights.
The stun connecting for Stubby in the top lane, but he is down 1 level. Popo's going to try to make this fight work with the ultimate, but Stubby is once again on his favorite style of champion. Gunjin loves him them tanks. Dragon getting real low in the bottom side of the map. Rice every meal finding a beautiful engage. Merlix is the first to go down as the dragon is secured by Zhongyi. Now Evil Zara has to be careful. Stubby teleporting into the fight, as well as the paranoia. The double knockup coming through. Stubby is popping off the flash from JTS. Gonna be able to find a kill as Tipic also falls down. Rice every meal. He finds, the root misses from Zhongyi. Can't find the setup assist there. The shockwave is going to connect onto JTS. Lowry, she doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of mana left. The root is going to connect this time. Rice every meal hopping over the wall. JTS on a killing spree as Gunjin. He's got 100% kill participation through the opening 8 minutes.
He has 100% kill participation, and JTS making the plays happen, and it is disastrous for the side of 9. I keep trying to say, you can hear the no fear wolves coming out of my mouth, and it's my brain is going mental. But Nine-Tailed Fox, it is tragic because again they had the setup for the side of Fever, and there was no TP on the side of Popo. Stubby had already saved his TP and just been able to walk back in the lane, and he was able to make the bigger play in that team fight. And now JTS picking up those 3 kills and those 2 assists, picking up all of that kill XP. He's going to kind of get expedited in this game, and that Nocturne ulti is going to come up faster and faster, and he should have probably, I believe he took, he didn't take the ultimate Hunter this game. That would have been gross if he did, because his ultimate would have been stacking, but he did end up just taking that resolve rune, and is just going to go for a more low and slow kind of game, as Garen Buffett does say. But in terms of just lane states, it is a disastrous situation for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox.
Popo is gonna use, I believe that's the ultimate coming out. A lot of damage coming through. The Gwen gets stunned up right on the wall. Stubby has been on point through this early game, finding the little lane interactions that's been giving him an edge in this matchup. A tough matchup for sure, as Popo in the jungle, game number 1, now has to go back into the lane, get in a little trip back to reality about how tough these lanes can be sometimes.
But you can see, Mac, already what's happening. Obviously, Popo is going to end up losing the shorter trades with the Grasp versus the Conqueror, but in the longer trades, Popo will just trying to just sustain out the Poppy damage, but he's never able to get that opportunity, because every time JTS pushes out the lane, he immediately goes into Fog of War and threatens the side lanes.
JTS has to be careful. Tipic is looking for a gank in the mid lane, but look, here comes Zhongyi looking for the turnaround. The root is going to connect. Zhongyi is still sniping here in game number 2. JTS not going to go under tower for the kill. Zhongyi going to try to slow down Tipic with those soul shackles, but he's going to be undeterred. Meanwhile, an engage into the bot lane. Merlix going to slow down Evil Zara just a little bit. Jared Blue trying to dish out the damage, trying to pick up his meal of rice. Looking for the kill. He finds it. Stubby, meanwhile, in the top lane, picking up a kill. Trading in the bot lane. Evil Zara picking up a kill as well. Across the board, Gunjin, it's a 2-for-1 in favor of Fever.
I feel like directed camera just had kind of like an implosion because the camera was just shaking as there were fights bot lane, mid, top lane, but overall advantage Fever, and you can see the problem that is happening because Stubby is just putting his paws onto Popo, cracking open this lane that should be a scaling lane for the Gwen. That's not gonna happen, and you can see what's really happening is that the pressure that JTS is applying is just making so these lanes are harder and harder. And in the bot lane, they tried to go for the 2v2, but there just wasn't enough passive stack and there wasn't enough damage laid on to Blue as everyone exploded. But in the end of the day, Fever gets the advantage. Fever has the gold lead with a 3.1k gold lead, and as Dragon spawns in 56 seconds, you already know that Fever is setting up and making sure that this dragon will be theirs.
A huge turning point for Fever as once again, Gunjin, they find themselves excelling in the early game, finding fight after fight, root after root connecting for Zongi, who's been on point once again alongside JTS. Gunjin, they've been moving around as a duo, finding advantages in the other lanes, making sure that the team is playing as a whole. And with Dragon spawning in 20 seconds, look at the amount of vision they have in that blue side jungle of Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx.
They have complete control besides that bot side river bush, but they're gonna be able to clear it out for the side of Fever and make sure that there's just no vision for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx. And you can see, if you're this team, if you're Nine-Tailed Fox, you cannot contest this dragon. It is just a cloud dragon. You've already expended the TP from your Gwen, so Stubby does have the opportunity to just walk down or try to maybe, if they delay the dragon, TP in. So they're just gonna try to go for a Jinx steal, but nothing happens. Zongi does end up picking up the dragon, and now, oh no, that's not how it works.
Rice every meal, getting chomped by the flame chompers, not ideal. Meanwhile, JTS looking for an engage on to Lowry in the mid lane, not going to be able to find a kill just yet, not even burning a summoner spell. The Orianna able to walk away from that one. Gunjin, I would like to report the No Fear Wolves versus Death Cards Academy series. It's tied up 1-1 as Death Cards find a big win, but we got a fight in the bot lane to look at. The Featherstorm dealing so much damage with the Blade Caller. Evil Zara with great positioning finds the first kill of the fight. Now Blue gonna have to go on to the retreat. Meanwhile, Stubby knows no mercy, but look at the damage. You're gonna have to try to deal with 200 years, baby. Popo with the outplay in the top lane.
And it got close because Popo ended up missing that second charge of his Gwen ulti, but he does end up picking up the kill. Stubby just being a little bit too over-aggressive under tower. He's fine just chilling out as they're making plays in the bot lane, but Zongi crashing the Rift Herald. They're going to crash this tower, and at 13 minutes, the bot lane of Fever is going to already be unlocked, getting ready to go and roam into that mid lane position. And again, I said it, and it feels like I'm a broken clock, but JTS is now unlocked. He's gonna be able to sit in the side lane, ulti onto anybody, and this Nocturne with Stridebreaker is gonna be an immense threat that nobody on the side of Nine-Tailed Fox should be able to deal with.
Popo with that gold is going to be able to get his mythic item completed, trying to play catch up. He's actually ahead in gold over Stubby. This Gwen win condition potentially on the map for Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx, maybe as a split push threat, maybe as someone to just stay alive in the team fights and just become unbearably strong. But looking at the mid jungle duo, Gunjin, a huge lead for them before the 15-minute mark.
Yeah, the mid-jungle duo for the side of Fever has been playing well in game number 1 and in game number 2. They're just kind of taking over the early game, and it feels like whenever there's a play that's happening for the side of Fever, they're always involved. It's never kind of an isolated play. They're always getting involved. They're always making things happen, and they're getting teams a lead, regardless of if they end up picking up a kill or an assist. Just the pressure they're putting on the map is making sure that Stubby can play over-aggressive. It's making it so that Evil Zara and Rice don't get just yanked by this Volibear. And now as these lanes have kind of situated out, you can see that Stubby is going to be tanking out the Orianna in the bot lane, but they're going to end up sending the bot lane up top to try to break open that tower and put Popo in a worse and worse situation.
After that bot lane turret, the outer for Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx has been destroyed. A little mix-up for the lane placements for both teams. Stubby not afraid to try to fight anyone, as you've got the range advantage for the side of Fever in the top lane, potentially looking to knock down this turret. That's going to be Evil Zara picking up a big objective. Paranoia unable to go onto the Gwen, untargetable by the way. JTS looking for the engage onto Tipic, but the Volley Bear, despite not having any big item completions online, is going to be able to walk away from the initial engage. Popo, meanwhile, has to be careful. Merlix is going to interrupt this fight. Rice Every Meal looking for the engage, but the turret is enough of a deterrent to avoid any further fighting.
They don't end up getting any kills, but again, they're getting exactly what Fever wants. They're just breaking open towers over and over again, using the strength of this bot lane on this spike of Essence Fever plus the Noon Quiver, and they're just trying to take objectives. This is something I call blitzing a game, where basically you unlock a strong point of your lanes and then just try to blitz as many objectives in the early game and hope the enemy team can never react in time. And that's basically what's happening. Every time it feels like Lori is in the side lane, it feels like the bot lane isn't ready to commit, and it feels like no one's sitting on enough items to try to contest any of these objectives, so they're just blitzing objective left, right, and center, and this gold lead is ballooning. Now it's a 4k gold lead, but after this Rift Herald is picked up, they can just drop it mid, blow up the mid lane tower as well, and they will have full control of this dragon. And at 17 minutes, it's gonna be Mountain Soul Point plus 3 towers plus a 5k gold lead, and at that point Fever is in such a big percentage chance of winning this game.
Yeah, we see Zongi with the Rift Herald rotating to the mid lane. You gotta ought to think that this is going to be dropped here to create some pressure to free up this dragon. That's going to be the Dark Binding connecting onto Merlix. The wave obliterated by Evil Zara Zaya. The Rift Herald going to be dropped. Everyone in the mid lane but Gunjin. This is exactly how Fever wanted things to go. They've got the dragon easily getting on the Soul Point.
Great stop from the side of I keep saying No Fear Wolves back. I can't help myself. I'm just a super fan in the heart.
Dragon does get secured. Evil Zara an early Featherstorm to try to find some damage, but Rice Every Meal with the huge engage! What a start to the fight! It's over before it even really begins for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox. Onyx, they get obliterated by the Magnet Storm. A huge fight going the way of Fever as they stick the dagger right into the red side squad. Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx gonna be put in a hard position.
Rice Every Meal has been drinking milk every meal because he just absolutely pounded that team fight. What a beautiful engage from that Rel Magnet Storm. He just wiped everything. We didn't even get to call the team fight really, because every single member on the side of Nine-Tailed Fox just absolutely obliterated. And now they unlock Mountain Soul Point. They unlock the tower mid as well. And at this point, with a 7k gold, just about 7k gold lead, you can see in 4 minutes, Nine-Tailed Fox have to fight for this Mountain Soul Point. If they don't, then you have a Poppy with Mountain Soul, you have a Nocturne running into you with Mountain Soul, and you have everybody just stacked up with those regenerating shields, and it becomes almost unplayable for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox. What a great team fight from Rice Every Meal. What great play from the side of Fever, and I love this blitz strategy. If the enemy team is not ready for it, it's something that can really catch them off guard, and it really punishes teams when their laning prowess isn't just as good as the enemy team.
The Gunjin Blitz coming out in full force as Rice Every Meal is leading the cavalry of 4-man engage around that dragon, absolutely just taking the fight in favor of Fever. The follow-up, fantastic. Everything going their way through the first 18 minutes, 38 seconds of this second game in the Block 3 in the matchup between Fever and Nine-Tailed Fox. Onyx, Gunjin, even if Fever come up with the dub in this one, there is still going to be a third game. Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx, they found a way to come back in game number 1. They found that third dragon, I believe it was, to try to save away the soul point, to try to buy themselves some time. Do you see them being able to buy themselves any more time here in game 2?
I feel like just with the control that Fever get, whenever they set up for an objective, and this is something that I really love about watching Fever, you can see the vision control they kind of establish before any objective fight. You're basically walking into a team that has a Nocturne and a Rel blind, and that's how you set up for these 4-man Magnet Storms. They just don't happen out of their thin air. Obviously, Rice is playing out of his mind, but just having a situation where you're having to walk blind in just creates these situations, and with Fever being so good at just having vision, creating vision like dominance in certain sections and quadrants of the map, I feel like for the side of Ninetale Fox, unless they get a miracle team fight, and the only miracle is Lori would have to land a 5-man Shockwave and a 5-man Death Rocket and a 5-man, and you can see where I'm going with this, a 5-man everything basically would have to happen, because right now with the gold lead that's happening, with Evil Czar sitting on 2 items, she's going to be able to burst out any single member for the side of Ninetale Fox. It is just incredibly improbable, but they will have to make their last stand at that Mountain Soul, because if you give Mountain Soul to this comp, it will be almost unplayable.
Getting right back into the Rift for some more League of Legends action. We've seen it before from Merlix, from Blue, to find ways to start fights with a pick onto someone like Evil Zara and just take over from there. I think on top of what you were talking about, Gunjin, they need to start with 1 kill, right, to try to make the fight work and make Fever a little more uncomfortable than they are right now, because with a 6.5k gold lead, they are cruising at the moment, feeling much better here in week 3 versus week 2.
Yeah, they're feeling a lot better, and you can see that the inventory for the side of Fever is just filled with pink wards down the line. They are just establishing vision control every single place they go. In 30 seconds, Baron is going to be up, and with the golden lead that they do have enough damage to just try to burst out the Baron, but I like what they're doing. They're just creating vision control around the mid lane. They're pushing up the waves, and they're just going into the side lanes and threatening that Nocturne. He is still incredibly strong. He still is able to pretty much 1v1 every member besides Popo, I believe. I believe that Gwen is just a little bit too strong with the invulnerabilities that she's not going to be able to get 1v1. But besides that, Lori can't really walk up and try to get any farm and try to CS, because the wave gets pushed mid, and then everybody on the side of Fever disappears into Fog of War and looks for picks.
Exactly, and with 2 minutes on the Dragon, right now, Fever, fantastic vision on the bottom side of this map. Not really worrying too much about the Baron threat, but Popo on this Gwen, plus Blue on the Jinx, could maybe look for something. We see Stubby going to be able to get out of any sort of trouble he has, as Gunjin, the big fight coming up for Fever in just a little bit. They get the Mountain Soul, and I feel like they're set up for the rest of the game.
The Mountain Soul, the second that Mountain Soul is taken, it feels like the game's probability goes down to pretty much 0.001, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a chance, but they're going to like to play on Popo.
He's caught out here, the Dark Binding connecting, the invulnerability not going to help out too much. JTS unstoppable. That's going to be his 5th kill of the game, 5-0 and 5. Meanwhile, the rest of the Ninetale Fox Onyx squad in the mid lane trying to push up, but they're forced to back off. Meanwhile, Zongi's still sniping with another pick. Stubby coming in. Merlix getting real low, and he's going to get taken down. Evils are on a rampage. JTS going close to under the turret, but he's immediately going to back off. Stubby with the hammer, dropping it down, knocking back those minions. Gunjin, could a potential play onto Baron come about right now?
They can try to go for this Baron, but they don't have full vision control. So if you're just making the safer play, just reset your members. You have the flank wards around that Dragon Pit. Just get this Mountain Soul. Let's not try to be super tricky about it. Let's just go for the guaranteed objective that you have, that you've set up vision around, and just try to make that play happen, because that's kind of just the easier play. Like, sometimes I feel like teams kind of a little bit too big brain for their own head. Let's just make it simple. Keep it simple. Stupid was a proverb my dad used to always say to me, and I'm going to say it to some of these teams. Just keep it simple. Let's try to make a play around this dragon, but they are going to try to get some sort of pick. And if you're the side of Ninetale Fox, this is what you need to do. You have to try and get something going before the dragon.
Wow.
You don't want to have a situation where it's just, let's just 50-50 and hope that something works. Because right now, the gold lead that... oh my god, that Fever possesses... Sorry, I'm getting baited by Jinx rockets. That Fever possesses is just too much.
Another binding landing from Zongi. Tipic going to bring the storm right out of the fight. Evil Zara, a huge feather storm engage, not really going to go his way. Jared Blue now with an opportunity. Flash rocket, rice every meal, just smurfing on this game. JTS finds the jinx. JTS dominating Stubby as well. Another root coming in. Fever are taking over Gunjin. Popo just going to walk away. This has got to be the Mountain Soul going over to Fever.
And you can tell that it's bad when Azaya is using her flash ultimate to try to engage teamfights. As a Azaya player myself, I feel like that's like one of the most BM things I can do, because it is one of the slowest engage tool. It looks super cool when you do it, but it's absolutely incredibly slow. They try to make the teamfight happen, but it was all a bait. Stubby, JTS, and Rice were just waiting for them to get a bite, and the members of Nine-Tailed Fox just took the bait. They went in, they ended up dying, and now they're gonna lose the Baron, they're gonna lose the Mountain Soul as well. And with a 11,000 gold lead, Fever take a dominant position in game number 2 as they look to close out game 2 versus Nine-Tailed Fox. But they've kind of griefed this dragon, so they might be able to, they might end up losing this.
Stubby's got to be careful. He does have his ultimate available, but he's just going to back off to the dragon for the time being. Is this going to be another snag for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx? The dragon getting real low. Red team smite secure. Tipic steals away the dragon. No Mountain Soul just yet, but a Baron power play on the Rift. Fever looking to pick up the rest of these inner turrets potentially, and maybe even crack open the base in the next couple minutes.
And losing the Mountain Dragon there's not going to be that big of a deal, as they did end up trading the Baron for it. They end up getting the Baron buff, so as long as they're going to be able to use this Baron buff and crack open that inhibitor line, it's going to be worth. Obviously, if somehow Nine-Tailed Fox is going to be try to hold at one of these inhibitor towers and get a good fight, then there's a chance of a comeback. But right now, with the state that Popo's in, he is sitting on 2 items. He is pretty much 1v1able, but basically what Fever is doing is they're just making sure the fight is never about him. He's never able to get a situation where he's chasing people down, he's getting picks in the side lane, he's 1v1ing anybody, because basically what's happening is Stubby clears out the wave and then looks for a play mid. And so you can never get that advantage because Popo isn't strong enough to threaten these towers, and if he ever walks up, none of his team is strong enough to push another side lane, and so Fever at that point can just overstack on him, kill him, and so it gets to a situation where you're like, why did I even pick this character? I should have just picked Malphite. And whenever you get to that situation as a Gwen player, when the 200 years isn't calling you, it gets bad. But there's a chance, but it is incredibly limited, as now they've almost crested the 12,000 gold lead, and it looks like they're just trying to put the final nails in the coffin for the side of Fever.
Oppo trying to snip his way through the minion wave up top. That's going to be the ultimate getting used there as well. Not going to have it for a potential upcoming fight in the next little bit. Stubby making quick work of this top lane turret as Fever using the Baron power play beautifully, picking up 3 inner turrets, but the wave clear is there from Jera Blue's Jinx. The Rockets doing some solid work clearing out these minions. Fever haven't been able to break open this base just yet, Gunjin, and they're going to have to wait quite a bit of time for the Mountain Soul coming up.
And if we can toggle to the side of Nine-Tailed Fox's vision, you can see why I really like Fever as a team that can really go far in this league. Is because whenever they get a lead like this, look at the vision stranglehold that they've pretty much just created on the map. There is no vision that is further than 5 feet away from Fever's base. Or not Fever's base, Nine-Tailed Fox's base. And so when you have teams like this, when, again, they are sloppy, they are overconfident. Stubby sometimes just tries to tower dive as a poppy, and that happens. And you just have to take the bad with the good, because when they're going on all cylinders, you can see the kind of control they can have, and they can really choke out any team. It doesn't matter who your players are, because when you play this coordinated, when you play this fundamental and good style of League of Legends, you can beat anybody on any given day.
Any given day. Fever, despite dropping last week's series against Death Cards Academy, showing their consistency muscles here in this series, looking very clean in game number 2, potentially hoping to close out this game with the Mountain Soul spawning in just a little bit. Gunjin, looking at this upcoming fight, what are you expecting from Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx to try to get a solid contest out here?
Jerry Blue hits his Jinx ulti steal. I think that's about it. Maybe Typic ulti flash. When Typic ultis, he actually transforms into Udyr. And then he gets to speed in to the enemy team and steals the dragon. Because right now we're watching
this duel.
It's close, but I'm just waiting for the Nocturne ulti.
It's coming in the mid lane for you. Meanwhile, Stubby getting the solo kill right onto Popo. He does have teleport and he will be respawning by the time Dragon respawns, but the engage is coming in the mid lane. Rise every meal once again. A huge shockwave coming in. The storm is brought in, but Blue Merlix, they don't have an impact in this fight. Zongi goes on a rampage. Zongi once again connecting with the Dark Binding. He's got himself a double kill. Gunjin, it's 3 members down for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx. Only the bot lane is still standing. Blue gonna try to hang on to this game with the Flame Chompers, but he's up against the entire Fever squad, and another Dark Binding connects. Zongi, the sniper, once again just demolishing the opposition. 5-0-9 in this game. The base is cracked open. They don't need Baron buff here, Gunjin, and Fever are popping off.
Feels like Zongi, whenever it comes to 1,000 range Morgana binding, he just cannot miss. Binding after binding, and it looked good. Lori landed a massive Orianna shockwave that looked like maybe he could turn it, but there's just not enough damage on the side of Blue. There's just no items for the side of Nine-Tailed Fox, and even if they get a perfect team fight, they just don't have it left. And as this Mountain Dragon falls for the side of Fever, it feels like it is just... they're just writing postcards at this point because the game is already over. They're just saying sayonara, see you in game number 3, because right now Fever is in such a dominant position that Stubby has now picked up the Tiamat on Poppy.
He needs to clear those waves, Gunjin. Come on, he's been a massive split push threat on the Poppy, handling Popo easily in the side lane. And when you've got an entire item advantage over your lane opponent, despite being down 40 CS, Gunjin, we take those deals. We take those trade deals for our investment portfolio, am I right?
We do. Anything as an investor, you gotta be bloodthirsty. Shark Tank taught you one thing: you gotta buy the dip, sell the rip. Fever was at the dip, and me, Icarus, and Mac bought, right? We're buying the dip, boys.
Absolutely. We've got Fever, my man, and in this game, I mean, all the big names are popping off. Zongi, Rice Every Meal, showing their veterancy in the mid-league as they are handling business here in Game 2.
And this is something I also, as we kind of talk about and wrap up the summary of this game, this is something that I really also like about Zongi, and even though people are going to say he's overrated, I enjoy his personality, but I also like his gameplay on the Rift, because you can see his vision score is absolutely ludicrous, but they're going for a fight. Hail Mary!
Baron not stolen just yet. It's secured by Zongi here. The ensuing fight coming up big. Evil Zara is still healthy. He's firing from the back line. Gunjin, he found a double kill. Zongi finishing off the fight as well. In Fever put the cherry on top of this game. Getting Baron, getting Mountain Soul. Now walking into the base. Popo's in the bot lane. He's got teleport, but may not be able to use it. Look at Stubby looking to interrupt it. This game is going to be coming to a close. Fever 25 kills to 2, doing much better on the blue side of things. Nexus turrets getting knocked down. The Nexus is the last thing to go as Fever go up 2-0 in the Block 3 show match for Mid-League Week 3. Nine-Tailed Fox Onyx had a good game number 1, but in game number 2, their late game composition never coming together.
And I love that Fever just went fully into their bag and really just dived down into what they liked in game number 1. In game number 1, even when they had the 1-3-1 side lane threats, they said, no, we're just going to force team fights. So in game number 2, they said, hey guys, let's just draft team fights. And now they kind of put the draft and put the game plan and the gameplay together, and it's a perfect balance, a perfect cohesion. Everything coalesced into a win, and a dominant win in that. In 31 minutes, they take down Nine-Tailed Wolves. They had a close game 1, but in game number 2 is an absolute blowout. And a props to every single member down the line on this Fever lineup, because every single person played well. But for my end, JTS had a dominant performance, not because he was able to hold off on this Orianna Nocturne matchup, which is obviously favored for him, but he was able to create pressure by just properly roaming his fog of war and like vision denial. He was able to get out of the way and just create situations where Ninetale Fox is constantly thinking, can I aggress here? And I can't because Nocturne's not on the map. And so it may be the pick, but I think he was playing it incredibly well, and the pressure he was able to provide was just big, and props to Fever for that dominant game number 2 win.
And for a more in-depth look at this domination from the side of Fever, me and Gunjan are going to be going to pass it right back on over to our absolutely lovely analyst desk. Icarus, Cam, let's hear your thoughts on Game 2.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're hopping out of Game 2 here, and I want to start off by saying that at the end of that game, the goal difference between Fever and Nine-Tailed Fox was 17,000 gold ahead. And I don't think that I've ever seen a team win a game with that much of a goal difference.
That was quite the stomp. I think the final score was somewhere around, what was it? At least 20-4. It was somewhere in the 30s to like less than 5 kills. That is the stomp that you just hate to have played against you. It is not fun at all.
24-2 is a painful scoreline to come out, especially considering that they had performed so well in game 1, and then having game 2 go south so quickly there just feels really, really bad for the side of Ninetale Fox Onyx. However, Fever played out of their minds here, and I think really a lot of it came down to just how the drafting went in the very beginning of this game.
Yeah, I mean, the R5 Gwen pick, I think, just went against the entire team identity of their comp with the Jinx, with the Orianna. That's just not the two champions that you want to be picking Gwen with, as they are like those long-range, long poke. We want to play for mid to late game fights, and Gwen wants to go in scrappy early game.
More than that, I think that what bothered me is that the Gwen went to Riftmaker, the item that we talked about in the analyst test, saying, hey, this item isn't that great. Maybe look towards the Frostfire Gauntlet. And we saw Popo, he used the Sunfire Aegis in the first game, and it worked out pretty well. He was able to frontline, was able to take a lot of hefty trades there, but when playing against the Poppy using the Riftmaker, you're never going to be tanky enough to burn through the Poppy's health. Sunfire Gauntlet at least would have given you the health, the armor, and some more mana to be able to work with there, but unfortunately just not working for him at the end of the day. More importantly though, I want to look at the mid lane and how this Nocturne was able to do so much work for the side of Fever.
There were a few very close, I think, solo kills, both in the top and the mid lane. But I mean, in the end, that Nocturne pick, I mean, we didn't talk about it as much on the analysis desk before the game, but Nocturne into Orianna is one of her hardest counters. So, I mean, we really got to see how hard that Nocturne just absolutely destroyed the Orianna in lane, out of lane, in team fights. Split pushing in pressure. It's just with that like just forceful damage, go in, I'm going to kill you now. It's like, that's not the champion that is very easy to play against as an Orianna.
It's extremely difficult as an Orianna, and it makes it especially harder when you have the Morgana in the jungle still being locked in here for Fever. We didn't see a priority on it in game 1, but coming into game 2, absolutely that Morgana B1 rotation getting picked up right off the bat there for Fever, and they're really making good use of this. And we've been talking about who's going to be MVP for this series, and it seems like it's pretty up in the air between JTS and Zongi for their killer performance as a mid-jungle duo, but you had somebody else in mind that we were talking about off screen that you think is putting up hella numbers for Fever.
I think Rice played that game extremely well. I mean, we saw a few like small micro mistakes, right? You saw him flash into the Jinx traps in the early fights, but I mean,
we'll talk about it. It didn't
happen. No one saw it. It's okay. I'm sure there's not like 20 clips or anything. No, we didn't see it. No, but I mean, the way that he played those team fights around the dragons, around the barons, around the mid fight, It's just like those magnet storms that he was able to land with the flash engage absolutely turned the fight around for the Nocturne and the Morgana to be able to get their damage off, as well as we got to see the Xayah was able to flash forward with their ult for that extra damage, which is just, once the Xayah is able to do that, man, as we were talking in Twitch chat, it was like, it is not very good.
It is always just the worst situation when you fall so far behind that the AD carry of that Xayah pick is able to flash forward and flash forward with the ult aggressively. That means she has no more defensive utility abilities left, and able to play that far aggressively, you know the game's just a little doomed at that point. And it's going to be hard for Ninetale Fox Onyx from here on out, because we want to see them pick up a win here. We always want to see everyone play it to the best of their potential. And after watching that game 2 be so one-sided, I want to know from your opinion, what is it that Ninetale Fox Onyx can bring into game 3 here to provide themselves a little bit more leeway, give themselves some room to maybe pick up a victory?